Representative Bill Huizenga, Republican from Michigan, just asked the Secretary of Defense a series of simple questions about the cost of the war in Iran. How much to replace the munitions? Around $24 billion, Pete Hegseth said. How much to replace the 39 lost aircraft? Hegseth said that's very hard to calculate. He wants to do a full diagnostic before estimating the cost.
There are costs there, sir, but I want to get back to you in writing and what they specifically are, because as you can imagine, repair of aircraft is something that's very hard to calculate. We want to do a full diagnosis of the aircraft before we estimate that cost.
Huizenga noted that the lost aircraft are not included in Hegseth's $29 billion cost of war estimate. Hegseth said they are included, but as an estimate, that could change over time. How about military construction? Hegseth said there are a lot of unknowns. They don't know what their future posture will be. They don't know how they'll reconstruct bases. They don't know what allies will pay. No good estimate.
We have a lot of unknowns there. We don't know what our future posture is going to be. We don't know how we construct those bases, and we don't know what part our allies or partners could pay into the MILCON cost. And so we don't have a good estimate for that at the time.
How about fuel? Hegseth said fuel is wrapped into operations and maintenance costs. Then Huizenga turned to the FY26 budget request. Procurement is up 84%. 38% of that request is in reconciliation. Huizenga asked if that reconciliation request includes anything from the war in Iran. Hegseth said there is over $40 billion in munitions requests that are being used in the Iran conflict.
Actually, we're buying things in the reconciliation requests that are being used in the Iran conflict, including munitions. There's over $40 billion in a munitions request and reconciliation, and so that would be part of the replacement.
But then Huizenga noted that the reconciliation request was completed before the Iran conflict. The assumptions were made before the war. Huizenga asked if there will be another reconciliation request next year. Hegseth said next year's request will be discretionary only.
For our budget request for 28, we expect to request that as discretionary only. And I believe the top line for that is 1.23, which will be our request that year.
Huizenga yielded. The numbers are staggering. $24 billion for munitions, 39 lost aircraft, a $29 billion cost of war estimate that doesn't include a full accounting of repair costs, a procurement budget up 84%, over $40 billion in munitions requests, and the administration cannot say how much any of this will ultimately cost. Let's watch. I'll break it down.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Case.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Hurst, what is the total replacement cost of the material that we have expended in Iran to date? By the way, by material, I refer to munitions. I refer to, planes, to drones, to stuff that we keep in our stockpile.
Yeah, I'll exclude military construction from this because we don't know what that's going to look like in the future, but I would say it's around $24 billion.
Okay.
Replacement and repair.
And that's through what date?
That's our current estimate.
Okay. I'm looking at a report in the public sphere from CSIS dated April 21st, which calculates estimated aggregate unit cost of 7 precision systems. So I'm talking, Tomahawk, JASSM, PRISM, SM-3, SM-6, THAAD, Patriot, those 7 at about $25 billion. Does that sound about right? I mean, you're projecting everything at about 23.
Yeah, I'm most confident in our projections on munitions costs. That's the easiest thing to calculate. So that number sounds a little high to me for that stage of the war.
Okay. We've lost about 39 aircraft, according to a report in the war zone, and that's an old one. That's almost 1 month old. Do you have a replacement cost on all of those aircraft? Now, understanding that some of that aircraft is not replaceable, but presumably would have to replace it with some kind of capacity.
There are costs there, sir, but I want to get back to you in writing and what they specifically are, because as you can imagine, repair of aircraft is something that's very hard to calculate. We want to do a full diagnosis of the aircraft before we estimate that cost.
Okay, but that's not in your estimate of somewhere around 29 cost of war that you gave us?
That's included. That's what we have right now.
Oh, I see. That is part of it.
Yeah, but it's an estimate, especially for repair costs, and so that could change over time.
Okay. And you did talk about MILCON, which was a question that I had. Do you have any, because I mean, we've obviously suffered major damage to our infrastructure in the Middle East. You don't have a MILCON estimate yet?
We have a lot of unknowns there. We don't know what our future posture is going to be. We don't know how we construct those bases, and we don't know what part our allies or partners could pay into the MILCON cost. And so we don't have a good estimate for that at the time.
Okay. What about fuel? Is that a major calculation in your cost of war? Fuel used, depletion of fuel reserves, replenishing that reserve?
We wrap that into our operations and maintenance costs.
Okay, that's
Included
an
in the
OM.
29.
Okay. Going to your FY26 budget request, you've got procurement. Let's just focus on procurement because that's what we're talking about largely. You've got $413 billion, which in and of itself is an 84% increase over FY20. I'm sorry, I'm in 27, 27 versus 26. And you have 38% of that total procurement request in reconciliation. Does that reconciliation request include anything from the war in Iran?
Obviously, we're buying things in the reconciliation requests that are being used in the Iran conflict, including munitions. There's over $40 billion in a munitions request and reconciliation, and so that would be part of the replacement.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is your reconciliation request in FY27 related to Iran, or is it not related to Iran, or what? Is it all?
Related. You know how long our budget generation process is and the appropriation cycle, and so we completed this before the Iran conflict started.
Exactly. Okay, so what you're coming back to us with is not the reconciliation is not about Iran. The reconciliation is about assumptions that were made before Iran.
It's about making a generational investment in the joint force and building military readiness. That's what our budget request is.
Okay. I'm going to get back to some of the questions that were asked earlier, which is, what is the assumption that you are making in terms of future reconciliation bills in future fiscal years? How much of this is loaded into this particular fiscal year? You had a big reconciliation last year, which was portrayed in the same light, and now you're coming back for a huge one this year. Is another one on the horizon next year then?
For our budget request for 28, we expect to request that as discretionary only, and I believe the top line for that is 1.23, which will be our request that year.
Okay, I yield back.
There is a reason Representative Bill Huizenga is one of the more detail-oriented members of Congress, and this exchange is a masterclass in why. He did not come to grandstand. He came to get numbers. He asked Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, for the total replacement cost of material expended in Iran: munitions, planes, drones, stockpile items. Hegseth said around $24 billion excluding military construction. He said he's most confident in munitions costs. That's the easiest thing to calculate. But then Huizenga brought up a CSIS report from April 21st. It calculated the unit cost of 7 precision systems: Tomahawk, JASSM, PRSM, SM-3, SM-6, THAAD, Patriot, at about $25 billion. Hegseth said that number sounds a little high for that stage of the war. Huizenga then asked about the 39 lost aircraft. According to a report in the War Zone, almost a month old, the U.S. has lost 39 aircraft. Huizenga asked for a replacement cost. Some of that aircraft is not replaceable, but the capacity would have to be replaced. Hegseth said repair of aircraft is very hard to calculate. He wants to do a full diagnostic before estimating the cost. He said that cost is included in his $29 billion cost of war estimate, but as an estimate that could change over time. Huizenga noted that the estimate does not include a full accounting of repair costs. Hegseth agreed. Then Huizenga asked about military construction. The U.S. has suffered major damage to its infrastructure in the Middle East. Hegseth said there are a lot of unknowns. They don't know what their future posture will be. They don't know how they'll reconstruct bases. They don't know what allies will pay. No good estimate. Huizenga asked about fuel used, depletion of fuel reserves, replenishing. Hegseth said fuel is wrapped into operations and maintenance costs. That's included in the $29 billion. Then Huizenga turned to the FY26 budget request. Procurement is $413 billion, an 84% increase. There is over $40 billion in munitions requests in reconciliation that are being used in the Iran conflict. But then Huizenga noted that the reconciliation request was completed before the Iran conflict. The assumptions were made before the war. Hegseth agreed. The reconciliation request is not about Iran. It is about making a generational investment in the joint force and building military readiness based on assumptions made before the war started. Huizenga asked if there will be another reconciliation request next year. Hegseth said next year's request will be discretionary only. The top line will be $1.23 trillion. Huizenga yielded. The numbers tell a story. $24 billion for munitions, 39 lost aircraft, a $29 billion cost of war estimate that does not include a full accounting of repair costs for those aircraft. A procurement budget up 84%. $40 billion in munitions requests in reconciliation. And the reconciliation request itself is not about the war. It is about assumptions made before the war. The administration is asking for billions of dollars based on a pre-war world. The war has changed everything. The costs are mounting. The aircraft are lost, the bases are damaged, the munitions are expended, and the Secretary of Defense cannot say how much any of it will ultimately cost. Hegseth is confident about munitions costs. That is the easiest thing to calculate. But everything else is hard. Aircraft repair is very hard. Military construction is full of unknowns. Fuel is wrapped into O&M. The reconciliation request was completed before the conflict. The assumptions were made before the war. Huizenga did not accuse Hegseth of lying. He did not raise his voice. He simply asked for numbers, and Hegseth could not give them. Not because he is hiding something. Because the administration does not know. They do not know how much it will cost to repair 39 damaged aircraft. They do not know how much it will cost to rebuild damaged bases. They do not know how much allies will contribute. They do not know if there will be another reconciliation request. They do not know the full cost of the war they are fighting. Huizenga yielded. The hearing moved on. But his questions linger. The American people are paying for this war. Their tax dollars are buying the munitions. Their children are flying the aircraft. Their future is being mortgaged to rebuild the bases. And the Secretary of Defense cannot tell them how much it will cost. That is not confidence. That is uncertainty. And uncertainty is the most expensive line item in any budget.